Hey, welcome back to another episode of Page Burners. This is a podcast where we are going through all of the Malazan books, not just the Book of the Fallen, but everything by Stephen Erikson and Ian Esselmont. We are currently just having finished Book 4, House of Chains, and we'll be moving on to Book 5, Midnight Tides, next. With me this week to discuss full spoilers, that is, full spoilers for all of the Book of the Fallen, I have a couple of my lovely friends. I am, of course, Carl. And, every week we like to start off by mentioning what we're most excited to discuss. And for me, this week, I think I am most excited to discuss Karsa Orlong and how he fits into the series as a whole. With that said, I'm going to hand things off to Mirka.
Hey everyone. I don't have anything specific to talk about today. I was trying to think about some storylines that we have hints of in this book, and they kind of extend past this book to the future. And there are a few, but nothing. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where we go.
And my name's Shannon, and I hadn't thought about it, but I guess I will throw out there. I'll throw out Leomund. One thing, and how he breaks my heart in Bone Hunters when he reveals himself to be a complete asshole. Um, and so yeah, rereading this, like he was one of my favorite characters in this book, but man, like knowing what he does in Bone Hunters, I'm like, you asshole.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. So I think, first off, we should just start off with exactly how this book fits into the series as a whole, right? I mean, we're nearing the halfway point. I do think that this book is, in a way, kind of a turning point for the series. To me, it's kind of when the big picture starts to become a little more clear. It's still hazy, but, it becomes much clearer in the Bone Hunters, I think. But I definitely, I mean, at least on my first read, I felt like this book marked a change for the series. What are y'all's thoughts on where House of Chains fits in the Book of the Fallen as a whole?
I think we mentioned it last week as well already that it's a little bit of a setup for the rest of the series. We have the Bone Hunters starting to actually become a thing, and for the first time, I think we meet the adjunct. I don't think if we had her point of view in the previous books, have we? I don't think so. She was mentioned, but never. I mean, we haven't had her point of view in this book either. But she's present. Um, And yeah, I think, you know, the Crippled God is kind of is in the pantheon. He has been sanctioned by the master of the deck, so the game is ready to start. I guess yeah, I feel it the same way. And the story is kind of concluded. The initial stories of the first 3 to 4 books, right? So I think it's definitely a turning point, and then not only because the next book starts with a complete new world, new characters,
Yeah.
and everything kind of resets. You kind of finally think that you are getting a grasp of what's going on and how things work, and then you are thrown into a complete new continent, new magic system, new characters, and you have no idea what's going on again. New races.
Classic Erikson. He
Yeah.
really, as soon as you think you have everything sort of figured out, you're on stable ground, he just rips, the carpet out from under you.
Yeah, that was
I
very. I remember being so annoyed on the first time. I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" And uh, then you go and you kind of flip through the pages to see if you see any familiar names at any
Yeah,
point
none of them.
throughout the Midnight Tides, and there is none. You're like, okay, so we're doing this.
It was yeah, it was a tough adjustment for me as well. I hear you. Shannon, sorry, you were saying something.
Oh, I was gonna say, so yeah, something I thought was interesting about this book. So last book, we've got the Panian Seer, and we've got this idea of compassion and everything, which very much I think mirrors what's going to happen in the Crippled God, going all the way to the end of the series. And then this book, not so much, not at all. In fact, I mean, Felisin gets killed by her sister, and her sister doesn't even know. And I wonder if there's a Erikson was doing something there, where we see Tavor at this point. She kills her sister, um, not meaning to, but just but doing it, and then that's eventually we're going to see her giving compassion to the crippled god at the end of the whole ordeal.
Are you saying you think in some ways this is her Tavor's great sin that then is kind of in some way redeemed in her freeing the crippled
Maybe.
god? Or
I don't know. I'm
well
I'm I'm working out the thoughts. I'm not totally
okay,
sure.
fair enough.
That
Yeah,
is an interesting idea.
I hadn't necessarily thought of it that way, but I do think that maybe there is something to that. I mean, it's definitely intentional that Tavor is introduced not only as very distant, but frankly as a very callous and borderline unlikable character. I mean, her very first introduction is as a child in Gardens of the Moon, which I had completely forgotten about before we reread that. However, after that, we just know her as the new adjunct who sold her sister into slavery, right? And that's about one of the worst things you can imagine doing. Uh, Everyone says she's, a genius, someone very young who's risen up really quickly, and you kind of have to question, okay, is there a political choice behind that? But I think you are maybe supposed to be reluctant to empathize with her or sympathize with her. I mean, not just reluctant, but
Absolutely.
not even trying to, because she is a brick wall and is someone who has done something abhorrent. And in many ways, the series as a whole is about kind of picking away, I think, at her walls and coming to understand who she is as a person. You definitely get hints in House of Chains, but I feel she doesn't become fully fleshed out until the later books.
Hmm.
It's hard to get a read on her.
That's true. I
I
think
mean, I
it's
would.
intentional that you start liking her more as she becomes more respected and just becomes part of the army that she's leading. Um she has frankly very cool stuff when she defies the empress and just puts the safety of the Wiccan warriors ahead of anything else and basically escapes the Malazan Empire. Um yeah, I think you're right that we start by not liking her, who would, send their sister into slavery just to prove to someone else that she's loyal. Um, and then I think, House of Chains is where it starts to turn a little bit, and then she continues being very mysterious and you are unsure, but I think you're maybe as a reader you're starting to get on the side where you like her and respect her and I think that's what the soldiers and her army are going through as well.
It is very weird on a reread, being entirely on her side from step one.
Mhm.
I love Tavor, and I think most people who finish the series end up loving Tavor, even though, of course, she is a flawed character. And I think the way she handles the Felisin situation is just stupid. But in general, I mean, she is just so supremely competent and an actually kind-hearted person that I think you fall in love with her by the end of the series. And so it definitely is. It's just weird, reading all her scenes and being like, yeah, I'm on your side. Like, fuck all these people going against you, Tavor, which I definitely didn't have the first time through, where I was not her biggest fan. I suspected what Erikson was going for, but I wasn't sure. I mean, with how unpredictable this series is, it's tough to tell exactly who's going to be sticking around even, Some people may die, some may simply get written off and never appear again, or
Yeah.
appear
Well, the
once,
Yeah.
like 3
first
books later.
adjunct died very quickly, right? So,
Exactly.
like, maybe this is the second one, but who's going to be the third one? Yeah.
Exactly. Just keep
Well,
it could be like, the like defense against the dark arts teachers in Harry Potter, where they
Yeah.
just keep recycling, new adjuncts. That could have
yeah.
been
Yeah.
fun in its own way.
Mhm.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I,
Shannon.
I 100% agree. I think Erickson, he famously kind of we never get a POV from her, and yeah, you don't the first time you read it, you don't really know what to make of her. There comes a point where you're like, oh, she's good, but that's still a couple books away, really. I think, because yeah, it is so much built into the series that officers are, uh, if not bad, incompetent. In fact, this book, we had Rannell, Lieutenant Rannell, who was completely incompetent. Um, so yeah, so I like that is one thing really interesting about the reread is knowing what more like what she's up to and like, oh yeah, I'm 100% on her side this time around.
So I'm curious on a related note, Mirka, have you reread this book before? I know you read a few of the chapters right
So
before you
I
joined with
reread it
us.
in the past. So this was
Okay,
my like third half reread.
sure,
Yeah.
right. What were the major like differences for you? What really stood out to you, both you and Shannon, on a reread as opposed to your first time through House of Chains?
Hmm. I think the Karsa part, the book one, I think the second time around I really paid attention because I knew that Karsa was going to become this important player in the game and it's going to become much more likable. I guess that's a similar story as with Tavor. You start by, seeing this barbarian who like kills children
Yeah.
apparently without knowing what that means, right? And then, they have all these like barbarian um habits and all those events and that naivety of being isolated in their own world, kind of not knowing what's happening outside it. So I think on my first read, I kind of tried to rush through that part to get back to the characters that I know and that I want to know more about. Didn't think it was that important, but of course it was. And then the second time around, you were like, "Oh, okay. So what was the origin story of Karsa actually?" And you're paying more attention, and you find some more details. I guess they're them finding the Forkrul Assail is interesting because on the reread, what that race is and uh what is its part in the whole story, and that it will come up and that they will be relevant. So yeah, I think that's the biggest change for me.
And for me, one thing that really jumped out at me on this read was the Tiste Edur. I think about them as far they're in book 5, but this book really seeded them a lot. With them attacking the Shadow Throne and then just talking about him being this threat. Um, like Erikson really did a lot of seeding of this threat of the Tiste Edur right here in this book. So I thought that was really really cool.
Yeah, I mean, in all of these first 4 books, I have been shocked by how much is set up early on. I mean, I had it in my head that they didn't even mention the Tiste Edur until
Thank you.
maybe like book 4, and they're mentioned not only in book 1 but more heavily in each subsequent book,
Thank you.
including last time, in the context of the Barghast and their whole history and everything. Uh, and then here, obviously, quite heavily, there's a lot of setup that way, and then they come to the forefront next book. For me, I think the really big, other than just like understanding where I am and what's going on, which I can't say I felt confident about the first time through. I definitely, looking back, am much more immediately sympathetic to Karsa, and like I like Tavor on his side, but probably even more extremely just because like I'm thinking of like all of our like previous chats in House of Chains, and like how I was all about Karsa, and on a first read I don't think I was. I think I really didn't like him, and I liked his arc, and there were things I enjoyed about his story, but it is only with the context of the full series that,
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of like rereading Game of Thrones, and Jamie Lannister is my favorite character, and so like with the full context of the 5 books that have been released, it's suddenly rereading them is a different experience. Kind of having an idea of like
Yeah.
what's in the character's mind, where they go, what formed them, what tragedy. I think I'm much more aware too of kind of the subtleties of Karsa's character. I thought he was a pretty simple character, like kind of just a classic, like, oh yeah, a barbarian who's like gradually getting kind of redemption story, which is like it's well executed, but I didn't necessarily think there was a lot of subtlety to it. Well, this time around, I found a lot of interesting nuances and details in his portrayal, from the fact that like he is missing his mom, and how that isn't, you know, he doesn't ruminate on it. He doesn't ruminate on much of anything, but I definitely think that informs his character throughout, frankly, the whole series, but certainly in House of Chains. And that, the way that sort of feminine connection is lacking in his life. And then beyond that, um, the way that he kind of embodies a lot of the main themes in the book, like, whether obviously it's like the chains, but like the dynamic between like gods and mortals, and the push and pull there, and like taking a symbol and making it, in some way entrapping the power with that symbol, like he does with the statues. Um, that to like essentially give something a form is to weaken it, or at least to limit it. I mean, that's the whole idea with the House of Chains in general, is that now it's in the deck, has to play by certain rules. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think Karsa is like from the get go. Well, you don't realize it right away, but he's a smart guy. As a like his character is pretty smart, right? And you don't see it right away because he has this primitiveness about him, but it just means that once he kind of removes those barriers that kind of limit him and starts kind of understanding the bigger picture, that intelligence about him allows him to change and evolve as a character. And I think, many characters in this series go through a transformation and like, they evolve in time. But I think, yeah, you're right. The Karsa's development is very obvious and um, very interesting to follow.
Shannon, what are your thoughts about Karsa in general in this book in relation to the rest of the series?
Um, I mean, pretty much what you guys said. I mean, I always like the first time I read it, I really liked Karsa. I years ago, I read through like all the Robert Howard Conan stuff, so I've always kind of liked that barbarian, uh, s- not stereotype, but character,
Archetype,
um,
yeah.
archetype. And so yeah, but I always did see those as very romanticized, and so like I think kind of saw what Erikson was doing here, where we're doing a little bit more. this is what a barbaric character's really like. It's not just all, romance and, so but I like him. I like Karsa a lot. I really did enjoy reading him here. Uh, and yeah.
I think that it is really interesting the way like you touched on something, Shannon, there that I was kind of my same thought initially reading it. It was like, oh, Erikson is just being like doing the kind of classic edgy, like what if this fantasy archetype was actually treated realistically? And so the barbarian raider is like, of course, a terrible person, raping and pillaging and being, obsessed with violence, frankly, worshiping violence, being an egomaniac, and just really kind of taking the romance out of the character. And yet, I, like, there are other fantasy stories I can think of that kind of do that, and that's all they do with the character. But I feel like Erikson, within House of Chains, but certainly over the course of the series as a whole, takes that so much further and adds so much more. I mean, whether it is Karsa's war against civilization, which becomes this really interesting sort of philosophical, like, very like character focused, emotional development for him, all the way to that his story ends with him retiring in a little house and deciding to just live with his girlfriend, question mark, I mean, the whole thing is about him essentially giving up violence and giving up conflict and deciding actually the quiet life, the life his dad lived, was for him, which is the cool thing
He
is seeing
mocked it
now.
so much. He
Exactly.
hated that, right? Like he hated that his dad was not a warrior and didn't do any of the cool stuff that he wanted him to do.
It's interesting that like the big thing, not only that he ends up embracing his dad's life, which he hated so much as a kid, but like he has one of the most complete sort of classic hero's journey in the series. But the one thing he hasn't done is kind of go back, and like the hero and the hero's journey is supposed to essentially help like add to culture, give back to the community. And that's like the one thing Karsa hasn't done yet. I don't want to talk like too deeply about the Witness books. The second one, right, has only come out and we're not done yet. But I do wonder if that's kind of where his story is going to go, is to kind of close that loop a little bit. Um, because he basically ends the series deciding to just fuck off and, not involve himself with anything anymore. Um, to become this ultra passive character, which is the complete opposite of everything he was before that point.
I have to say, I don't quite remember right now how that happened for him. But in this book that we just finished, he still thinks about the other Tabor. And I think he mentions like, one day I'll be worthy. So, is worthy to lead you or to, I don't know, like raise this this nation or this race back to its glory. So yeah, maybe that's where we're going in the Witness trilogy.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. He's an unpredictable character. He rarely does what you expect he will do. I mean,
It's
down
true.
to in this book, swearing vengeance against the Malazans, and then in the same book, saying, "Yeah, actually, that was a bad idea, and you're okay, I guess. I'll just let you live." What
I
um
really did like that scene. Yeah, where he's, you know, I'm sad to let you guys live.
what in terms of like other character arcs really stood out to you? Um, what comes to mind when you're thinking of the high points of a reread?
I really enjoyed Gamet's storyline, which is very much a standalone thing. It doesn't expand past this book at all. not really, right? Because I think he's mentioned before, but then it's kind of over for him. But just within this single book, I really liked how, he had all those internal monologues, struggled, imposter syndrome, everything at once, basically. Like, you could almost feel his anxiety through the pages, and then it all ended up well for him. I really like that. It was very satisfying. And I don't even mind that it's not a character that sticks around for multiple books and has a super important role in the story. It was very satisfying to just see him go through that transformation and end up in a good place.
Ditto. I didn't care at all about Gambit and didn't remember anything about him before rereading the book, and he was one of my favorite characters this time around. I just really liked him. What about you, Shannon?
I mean, as I kind of talked about in our week to week discussions, I really enjoyed seeing the birth of the bridge or the bone hunters, um, and just kind of seeing like Fiddler's squad come together for the first time, Gessler and Stormy, um, and even Korab. Korab gets introduced here, and we see him do all this crazy stuff, and now I know he's going to end up with them as one of the bone hunters eventually near the end of the series.
I'm
I
so glad you
really,
mentioned that because as we were reading, I was like, Korab comes back, but I cannot remember for the life of me what he actually does. And he becomes a bone hunter. That's right.
Mhm. He
Is that
survives
in the
Yucatan
Bone
and then
Hunters? Yeah.
hooks up with
Okay.
them.
That's right. Okay.
When does
Yeah,
that
Yeah, I
he's
think
happen?
so.
I think in the Bone Hunters book?
yeah,
Must be, right?
yeah,
Because he's with them at the end of the book. Yeah, in the
yeah.
Malazan.
He's. I mean, I think he's basically the only person from the Army of the Apocalypse to survive in Yucatan.
Mhm.
And yeah, he joins up with Fiddler Slot is I think who he's part of. Which are the people he almost blew up at the end of this book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun point. I didn't even think about that too.
Yeah,
It's cool that he is sort of like. I mean, he's very different than Kalam, but he fits in the same sort of like role of this member of the Seven Cities rebellion,
yeah,
who through just kind of the journey, the origin story in some ways of this soon to be famous squad, he becomes a part of them, becomes one of their core members.
yeah. I just think he's a crazy interesting character. If we do get another chance to talk to Erikson, I do want to ask him about Korib and like where did you come up with the idea of creating a character that basically has plot armor like a main character, but he's not.
I love that he's like a Looney Tunes character, that he's like always getting into
Yes.
like the most insane hijinks.
Yeah,
It
like these
is
just insane things that would kill any normal person, but somehow he continually survives them.
he's fun. He's definitely
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, might not
What?
be the smartest cookie, but
No.
he's loyal.
Yeah.
And I really like that
Definitely
he
not.
joined the Bone Hunters, not because they make him or he's like, well, that's the only choice I have now, but he really kind of starts liking them because of what how they are and just really vibes with them.
Mhm.
Um, and that's really cute.
Yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, I think he's one of the last characters to die at the end of the series.
Oh, he does
Uh,
die. Sad.
yeah, which is so tragic.
I honestly do not remember which of the bone hunters makes it out alive. And I have favorites, but they're all of their fate just gets kind of washed away
Oh.
for me in the final battle.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't remember either.
Yeah, some of them make it, some of them don't. I just remember he doesn't. That was one of the ones I do
Mm.
definitely remember, like with Stormy and Gessler, like the ones that I definitely remember don't make it.
Yeah, there's, I remember. I mean, it's so dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the,
Um,
really at the climax.
and well, and Benton Roach too. Do both? I don't remember both of them better, just one of them. But yeah, the dogs.
Do they both make it out or one of them dies?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure Bent dies, the big one. I don't remember if Roach dies.
Oh,
What?
But
we have to emotionally prepare for that book.
Yeah,
God.
that's tough.
you know,
Porab, I'm excited to like actually. I'm gonna have this deeper connection to him now. Now that
Yeah.
you reminded me he dies at the end. Oh,
yeah,
what
he's
what
always
do you?
been one of my top probably like 10 characters of the series. I don't know why. I just really maybe it's the Looney Tunes thing. I don't know, but I just glommed onto him and love him.
He's fun. What do you make of Felison's place in the larger narrative? I should clarify Felisin the Elder, but we can talk about Felisin the Younger too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's good that that's going to sound really weird. No, I think it's good that her story concluded. It was definitely um a lesson in many ways of how you can how your life circumstances and events can change you and form you and you know get you into some really bad places. And I think I really like how I know people hate the ending of this book, but I think specifically um the two sisters kind of in a fight, one killing the other. It's very dramatic. I think it's an excellent ending. And I'm not going to be missing Felisin.
She's definitely not the
Fellison,
most lovable character. Yeah.
I will say the second time through, I was able to like her more than the first. The first time
Yeah.
I really, really didn't like her. And in fact, I remember reading Erikson's defense of Fellison, and I was like, "You're crazy." Like I don't care if you have a problem with me not liking her. I do not like her. But the second time through, I think when reading it with you guys, I was like, okay, I can kind of see it a little bit more, be a little more sympathetic to her, even if she's not doesn't act like a sympathetic person. Um, but yeah, no, this book, I mean, I like where it ended with her. I think it's a good ending. With her dying. Um, with Tavor. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's about as good of a conclusion as she was gonna get. Yeah.
She's one of the most tragic characters for me, and actually one of the most
Hmm.
iconic ones from this series. Maybe it is because she just is like her story is unrelentingly bleak all the way through, but whenever I think of Malazan, like, she is one of the characters I think about. I mean, up there with, like, Animander Rake and Karsa and Tavor and the Crippled God. For only appearing really in 2 books, she left a really
Hmm.
strong impact on me. Um,
Mhm.
a and I do think that maybe it's because of not only that it like, she has one of the saddest stories, but, that her shadow hangs over the whole rest of the series
Hmm.
and really, again, comes back to the forefront of the story in a very emotional way when Tavor reunites with Ganos and, falls to her knees and cries for the first time and says, "I lost her." Uh,
I was
I just
very
remember
surprised by that scene because I somehow thought that, Tavor being genius and all that, like she would either figure out what happened, uh, and like the reader wouldn't know, but like I this whole time I was like, does she know? Like, does she know that she's dead? Does she believe that story that they told her? She's so smart and she obviously has some hunches and insights
Yeah.
that other people don't have. So I mean, she must know something. And then when that scene comes in and you realize, oh, she actually like suffered through all this time and she's like still carrying that with her. She hasn't made her peace with whatever happened. That really shocked me.
that's the moment I fell in love with Tavor, where I was like, "I'm ride or die with her all the way." That, like, she's been
Yeah.
carrying that guilt all this time. That's one of my favorite I mean, talk about just like one of the most iconic scenes for me. And
Yeah.
I do know that Erikson, that was one that he'd had with him as he was writing the whole series. Like he knew it from very early on.
Mhm.
Um, and I think he nailed it. It really
Yeah,
just the
it's
payoff is great.
incredible how he's building her to be this really strong and, like, um, you know, uh, defenses up, no feelings, no emotions, and then she, like, just breaks and shows that, you know, kind of moment of softness, and yeah, it's very, very amazing and, like, incredibly well written, I would say, yeah.
Talking about the parents, they all to me feel like although they actually share very little page time together, they all to me feel like their stories are like thematically and emotionally uh, deeply tied together, and they're kind of reflective of one another in a lot of different ways, and their own like foils, I guess, although they don't interact as foils usually do. But like, I guess to kind of clarify a bit what I'm saying, Gano's, ends up very much being this sort of classic heroic figure uh, in Gardens of the Moon and in the early books, and yet he is immediately outlawed. And so, then for his sister to become the adjunct, the frankly like prime rival, sort of prime enemy for him within the empire. I would say even more than the empress herself, just in terms of the adjunct being the military leader, uh, is really interesting. And I don't know that as much comes of it as maybe I would have wished to have seen them, have to maybe butt heads a little more. But they do walk kind of interesting parallel paths. I mean, in that Tavor is ultimately outlawed and has to escape, and it just seems like none of them are fated to stay, high up in the Malazan military. And Felisin, of course, is like basically doomed from day one and becomes
Yeah.
this embodiment of. I mean, she's like literally through Shaik, and in my mind, is like the anti Malazans because it's just this force of chaos. It feels like even more than the crippled god, like because the crippled god is like kind of Machiavellian, like is organizing things, while like Shaik is just there to destroy, and that's all it is, like this whirlwind. I don't know if I'm necessarily explaining all of my thoughts here very well, but I'm curious about what you all think and feel about the Paran siblings as a whole, their kind of triangular relationship and how they reflect one another and impact one another.
Another parallel, since you are mentioning how their stories are or destinies are similar or different, um, I thought about how, Geno has had to become the leader of bridge burners by earning their respect, and then Tavor is going through the exactly same thing with bone hunters. Um, I think these two are definitely very similar, and is already like when they describe their childhood, when Felisin in this book is remembering her childhood, she was like, Genoas and Tavora are kind of practicing sword fighting together. They are the ones who like are into those kinds of things, and I'm the youngest. I'm not yet playing with them because they are older and closer siblings. So yeah, I think that entire thing carries over into this whole series where Felisin is the outcast because she's the youngest. She ends up the way she ends up, and then Tavor and Gano is basically share very similar destinies where they lead their respective armies, and then of course, um, they don't end up fighting each other because there is, I think, a very short time before Tavor gets outlawed as well, as you say. Um, but yeah, I guess interesting similarities between these two who grew up, you know, kind of practicing the army stuff and the strategic thinking together.
That what you're saying there reminds me that something that had not like I completely missed on a first read that really stood out to me this time in House of Chains is when Felisin is thinking back to their childhood and reflecting on it, and how Tavor is described as Gano's shadow. And I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of different ways you can read that. But on top of that, like there's the heavy implication that like she really looks up to her big brother, Tavor, I mean, and that Felisin is more like it's sort of like they form this weird line by age where Felisin is most entranced by Tavor, who is most entranced by Ganos, and that is not something that was really on my radar at all as I was reading the series for the first time. Of thinking like, what is she like? She must be thinking about him all the time, and maybe even asking sometimes like, well, okay, what would he do? What would Ganos do in this situation? And I am looking forward to seeing what little, more insights and hints we get about that and about her inner world this time around. All right. Let's now talk about Leomund. Shannon, you mentioned that was something that you were excited to discuss. I agree. He definitely stood out to me. Like I think the first time through, I was like, "Oh, the Omen of the Flails. Like, who cares? He's Karsa's buddy, and he's like a whatever character. Like nobody trusts him." But knowing where his story goes, he's a real son of a bitch. And so, yeah, I don't have positive feelings. Sort of the reverse of Karsa, where I'm like, knowing where his story goes, I really don't like him at all. And anytime he's on the page, I'm like, kill him. And he's still
Yeah.
alive by the end of the series.
Yep. He's still alive in the end of the series. And yeah, yeah, so he's a character. I loved him the first time through. And I think Erikson wants you to, with the whole he's the only one that's cold iron and all this stuff. And it's like, oh man, yeah. Leomund of the Flail, he's awesome. And then yeah, come the next time we see him, he's gonna, basically annihilate the entire army of Apocalypse just to save his own ass. And so
He's
yeah,
an
man,
ass.
he is. Yeah.
Mirka, thoughts, feelings about Leoman? Are you a secret Leoman fan?
Uh, Not really. I don't think I have any strong feelings one way or the other. Yeah, it's definitely annoying to see what he becomes in the Bone
Yeah.
Hunters. Um, but nothing much more than that. I don't know. I think he's one of the characters that don't really do anything for me.
Yeah,
That's fair.
it really ruins him for me because I mean, I don't want to get into it because of spoilers, but he does show up in some of the Esselmont books, and yeah, I did not like him when he shows up again, because I just remembered what he did.
Well, his whole thing too is I mean, he's like an ultra hypocrite. He plays the religious zealot, but he doesn't actually believe any of it. And I mean, he lays out it's interesting. He lays out his philosophy in this book where he's basically like he's a nihilist. Like he doesn't believe anything really matters, and that, you know, I do wonder, what lies underneath that drives him to do what he does. I mean, is it just a lust for power, or what greater depths are there to Leoman of the Flails? On a similar note, so who is, discounting Bidethal, your most hated character in this book, and who is your favorite? Let's do both. Most hated and most
Discounting
liked.
Biddeful, that's not. Well, yeah, that is fair.
That's the
Uh,
low hanging fruit. It's the obvious, like everyone in their right mind would say Bidethal. So we got to
yeah.
throw him out.
Yeah, he's terrible. Got what he
Least
deserved.
favorite character in this book. I mean, I feel like Corporal O'Donnell is also a little bit of a low hanging fruit. Mm, Dang, who else is in this book that's really just sucks?
I'll tell you, kind of a dark horse pick.
Yeah.
Cybala, the Talani Mass quote unquote goddess of, I think that's her name. Uh, the one that like starts with an apostrophe and then is an S. I think it's something like Cybala.
Oh, Sabal.
The one who like Karsa like rips her head
Yeah,
off.
the one who
Yeah.
takes all the and the one who
I
takes
hate her.
all the
Oh my
unwanted kids
god.
or something.
I mean, I hate all of them, but she to
Yeah.
me becomes the focus point of my hatred for all of the
Hmm.
seven. They're just so annoying. They're
Yeah,
so
just
annoying.
manipulative. Yeah,
I was gonna
terrible.
say
Yeah,
the main one kind of. I think I might hate him a little bit more. The one starts with a U.
you,
Or
Urigal.
Urgal.
Yeah,
Burgal,
they
because he's
just
like Karsa's own god or whatever, and so he's a little
right.
bit. But yeah, Sabal is terrible.
I think I a big part of why I hate them too is they come across as very incompetent to me. Um, in hindsight, I feel like a lot of the Crippled God's house is like he really seems to hire not very competent people. Um, I think you could argue that what's his name, Singar, with the coins is among his most competent hires, even though he
Hmm.
doesn't really come across as competent, but he actually succeeds at doing a lot of stuff.
Why do you think
And
that is? Why do you think he only picks, wrong people? That's
Well,
that's kind
that's
of
his whole
interesting.
kind of thing. Is he picks broken people,
I
the
mean,
rejects,
yes, I
and
mean, but they can be broken and competent at the same time, but they are
competent.
not.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Silgar. Let's see. In this book, we saw Silgar. He really sucks. In the past, we saw the not Talana Mass. Uh, what is his name? His herald. He was the
Oh,
herald
Yeah,
of
the
the
death,
dead
and he took
guy.
Jagger.
the
They're all
Jag Hut.
so annoying.
He kind
I
of
mean, the House of
sucks.
Chains is like just the house of like annoying pests. They're
Hmm.
they're all like just obnoxious, and you don't want to talk to them. Like you're like just stop, just shut up.
I
I don't want to
guess
hear
Well,
your voice.
Kalor is. I think at least we can call Kalor competent,
competent.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know how he's so confident, but yeah, he is.
He really gets lucky. I mean, Calor is maybe the luckiest character in the whole book, The Fallen. That it's like it's crazy that he is so obviously untrustworthy and a bad guy, and everyone is talking
Yeah.
about that all the time, and no one ever does anything about it. Like Bidithal, at
Yep.
least they're like very consciously making a political decision to leave him around. Calor, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not as sold on the logic for why they don't do anything about him. He's just, ugh. But I guess to get back to what you were asking, Mirka, that like, I mean, I think I'd really have to think about it from like a thematic perspective, what Erikson might be kind of trying to say, if anything. But I do think in world, it may just be because it's kind of a shitty job. Like all of their jobs suck. You know,
Right.
like do you really want to be the like on the team of just people who are known for being like broken and terrible and that nobody likes?
Yeah.
Like they're like the ultimate outcasts, the ultimate losers. Like I feel like if you had, like in our world, like a 21st century version of it, like one of them would be like the incel of the House of Chains or something, like it's just like the unfortunate, wretched few.
Yeah.
And Gollum would fit in, and I think a lot of them are great characters and are interesting, but not the most
Yeah,
competent,
I think maybe
you
it's
know?
about the desperation, like, you've just
Yeah.
been ignored and belittled by everyone else, and then suddenly someone comes and offers you this position in in a house, and you're like, okay, yeah, finally something good is coming from me. But like, would anyone who's not that desperate and not that broken accept that? Probably not.
Yeah, that's my thought. It is
Uh,
striking Karsa in comparison to the rest of them,
Yeah.
just in personality and everything. Like he does not fit the rest of their vibes. Like they're all downers except for Karsa. Like they're all the worst
yeah.
people at the party. You know, you don't want to talk to any of them. But Karsa's like, I mean, he's an asshole, but like he's kind of fun. You know, like he's
Hmm.
outgoing. He can be funny. He's just not like bad choice. Bad choice on actually an all-time bad choice to pick considering how Karsa just single-handedly ruins like half of the Crippled God's plans.
Yeah, Crippled God made a bad choice. So I'm looking here at the Dramatis Personae, and I'm gonna say for least favorite, uh, I might actually go with the Tiste Leomund. They were pretty sucky.
That's valid.
All of
I mean,
I
them.
they
want to
were
say
they
Yeah.
were
you
funny at the very end, but they were also just sucked. How they were treating Troll, and they're like, "Do you want to be our servant?"
I don't think you noticed this, but you had a Freudian slip there. You called them the Tist Leomen.
Mm,
I think quite appropriate.
Leosin. But yeah, and then for favorite, my standout for this book might have been Onrak actually. Uh, Big fan of Onrak.
He is lovable. What about you, America? Most hated, most liked.
I think we pretty much covered the most hated ones. Most loved. I don't know. I think it's always Fiddler. So yeah, I don't
He
know.
was good.
I just really
I
like that
like.
he's getting his second squad, like his
Hmm.
second family. And I mean, we don't know yet that that's what's going to happen, but knowing the future plot, I think it's just really
Yeah,
nice that he switched one squad and one group of comrades for another, and it's equally um strong bond, and he's like a father figure to all of them, which is really really sweet.
It is cute.
It's a little
I do enjoy
cliche
it.
to
yeah.
to
He
say that Fiddler,
basically,
Fiddler is my favorite character, but he's really great.
yeah, he
He's
basically
a good
steps into
character.
like Whiskey Jack's role
Yeah,
with the new. He went from being one of the kids to now being the dads.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I do love his squad. I mean, Cuddle, Bottle, Smiles, all of them are pretty great.
What are y'all's thoughts on Crocus and Absalar and their relationship, knowing the whole context of the series?
I don't know.
Given
I think I said it last week. I really enjoyed the scenes with each of them with Cotillion. Um, to two of them together, I don't know. I think it makes for a better plot if they are separate.
You know,
I
in a sad way, I think I agree that I'm most interested in them when they're apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, yes, obviously they're gonna end up together. So this book was splitting alliance. We're gonna have, Cotillion's gonna have them, go off and do different things for a little while. With that said, I feel like, I don't know, like Cutter doesn't really do anything that interesting to me for the rest of the series. Like he's there.
I
Um,
I I love his story in Toll the Hounds.
okay.
I mean, I love that whole book. That's my favorite of the books.
Told the Hound. Well, I like Told the Hounds. But yeah, so we'll get there when we get there. Maybe I'll appreciate him more the second time through. But I just,
For me, it's
with him hooking up with Scalara, like I don't care about.
oh god,
And
you just
then
reminded me that happens. Ugh.
yeah, I don't care about that.
Mm.
And then like I don't know, he's kind of I guess until Told the Hounds, he's just kind of there. But then Told the Hound Scalara gets hooked up with whatever, Kalam's cousin or whatever, and things get a little better.
I forgot about that. Okay. I remember that guy now.
Um, oh, and then speaking, I almost laughed last week, Carl, when you called Torvald Numb my guy, because the only thing I could think of was Told the Hounds, and like one of my least favorite scenes in the entire book series is where he, you know, tricks that girl into thinking he's, her husband or whatever, and it's just so skeevy and terrible, and I'm like, ugh.
I
Like,
had forgotten about that scene.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love Torvald Nam in this book, but yeah, when he comes back around, that's one of the. I mean, I really like Erikson, except like sometimes his humor, like he just kind of like I don't appreciate his humor sometimes, and that was one of those scenes where it was like, this isn't funny, this is gross, I don't like it. And Torvald Nam, you're terrible. And then he like goes home to his wife, and immediately we're supposed to like care about them.
Yeah, I don't have strong memories of
Yeah,
Torvald, I gotta be
but
honest.
I like Torvald with Karsa. They go well together. Just I guess just keep him away from home. Well, no,
What
I did like him when he was like a gate guard with those other guys. That was pretty good. Anyway,
when is he the gate guard?
in Told the Hounds when he
Okay, it is the
yeah, the guys that he like owes money to or something. I don't know. They all end up as gate guards to some lady. Can't remember who she was. She's said somebody. Is she Envy or something? I don't remember.
Envy does come back. Yeah.
Well, not Envy.
What
Who's the other one? Spite.
Spite?
Maybe she's Spite, like in
Hmm.
disguise. I don't remember. It's been a few years.
Like, Crocus and Absalar, I mean, like a lot of the characters, I think having a full, big picture view of their story, makes for an interesting reread with Cotillion and Shadow Throne, and I'm curious, what all do you think they're up to in this book within their larger plan? Like, by this point, they fully have to be embarking on their plan to free the crippled god. So,
Hmm.
what did you notice? What do you think they're doing here in the House of Chains?
You know what? I don't think I'll answer your question, but I'll talk about Cotillion.
Okay.
um, so I quite recently, before we read this book and the previous books, I read Path to Ascendancy, all four
Yeah,
books from Esselmond. And you guys haven't read it, right? So I'm not going to spoil it
I've
or
only read the
anything.
first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
I might have it.
And just, well, I guess I don't think that it will be a spoiler if I say that, you know, being used to that Shadow Throne and that Cotillion from those books, and then reading Erikson's book and reading these scenes with Shadow Throne and Cotillion, there's just there is a major disconnect there, and I think many people will notice that immediately. And so I was actually trying to read a little bit about that and like what's happening there. And Cotillion has these really sweet scenes talking to Crocus, talking to Absalar, kind of being the one who understands, the one who talks about their feelings and kind of um, acts a little bit as their therapist in a way. But then like how like he's very human, right? Like he's very very like kind of in touch with their softer side and
Mm.
and kind of supporting them and all that. But then you realize, as you say, Carl, he's the god who's like also thinking about power and like freeing the crippled god and like schemes within schemes and like always 2 steps ahead. And it's just I don't know, it to me it seems a little unlikely, all that being combined into a single character. And I think Steven Erikson said in one of the interviews, I have it here, Cotillion is not a nice man. He was never a nice man. But, is he or isn't he? Because, like, it's a very conflicted character, I feel. Do you guys feel that way as well? Or when you
Well,
think about Cotillion and Shadow Throne, are they nice or are they just, you know, gods that care about themselves?
well, I think Shadow Throne is. I mean, I don't think we're ever given anything from Shadow Throne that makes you think he cares about other people. Cotillion, though, we've talked about this before. How he starts off the series massacring a whole village, and then and then you look at him now, and I can't help but wonder. Maybe it was when he was possessing Sorry. Maybe there's something that happened to him during that time, because I feel like he's definitely different now than he was. And the only thing I can think that's different is that he went through that period where he was possessing Zari.
I oh man, I mean, you both touched on a lot there. I think there's a lot to say about Cotillion and Shadow Throne. Um, I disagree about. I guess I'll kind of go backwards through what y'all said. So starting with you, Shannon, I disagree that Shadow Throne is all cold hearted. I think he is more cold hearted and more distant, but he accepts the kids. And I mean, you could say he like kind of turns them, like, he's raising them as sort of his weapons. And certainly I think he's the type of person that like does try to make the most of the people around him. I think that's part of what makes him a competent ruler. However, I do think he still cares for people. And I think Cotillion in some way is his conscience. I think Cotillion, that's kind of his role, is ironically, despite being the god of assassins, I think he is the softer hearted of the two of them. That's not to say that he is, quote unquote, a nice man. I think he would struggle to really. He can be nice, but I don't know that I would call him a nice man, if that makes any sense.
I think you maybe
I,
would if you read Path to Ascendancy, honestly. Like
I
he's
read the first book. Well, okay. He, I don't know what happens in the later books, but there's only one relationship that I would consider Cotillion as behaving nicely. I don't think he goes about his day to day life, even as a young man, trying to be nice. He is
okay.
very by the book. I actually think that I also was taken aback by reading what he's like as a young man in comparison to what he's like as a god, but it worked for me. I mean, Wu, Shadow Throne in particular, I felt like, oh, I totally track. Like he, in some ways, is exactly the same. Um, Cotillion felt like a bigger change, and I think one of the shocking things was I won't get into details, but I could kind of see it. And I do think the big shift for him is ascendancy, or the first like really major shift where we are invited to interpret that, when people become gods, when they ascend, they are changed fundamentally on like a molecular level. And so I think that did change them. And I think they came out the other side of that, not only traumatized by one of their oldest friends trying to assassinate them, but themselves being like disconnected from their humanity. And to go back to what Shannon was saying, I do think that although we do not witness it directly or internally, it's kept at a distance, like Tavor. Cotillion's experience possessing Sorry was what reopened his heart. And I think then you see him most explicitly in this book, but continuing past it, trying to make amends and trying to make the most of it. I think the interesting question actually that I very much was reading this book is, wow, Cotillion is actually like, I'm really feeling what he's feeling and how he's trying to make amends and, do all this good. And then everything you were saying there Mirka about how Erikson talked about him and all of that, and it is forcing me to wonder if perhaps he is behaving nicely to achieve what he wants, what he and Shadow Throne want, because they are largely on the same page. They are individuals, but I do kind of feel like they are two sides of the same coin. And what I'll say
Yeah,
about Paths to Ascendancy is I wasn't crazy about the first book, but all my favorite stuff was when they were together. I love their dynamic as written by Erikson and Esselmont. And I do think, getting back to the Book of the Fallen, that it is possible he is entirely. I mean, we mentioned this last time that he might just be being like, I think he likes Crocus, but I think he's probably using Crocus to get Absalar. And then Absalar, we know
I agree.
he has plans for. But sorry, Mirka, you were going to say something.
was that? That's okay. Go on. Sorry.
uh, I mean, that's a really interesting question that you posed, Mirka, because I don't know that there is an obvious answer. And now I'm going to be this read through. I was like very much reading him as more compassionate than I like. I didn't like Cotillion my first time through until pretty late in the game, and now I'm like on his side and kind of rooting for him. And now I'm wondering if I need to actually take a step back and think about him as this more Machiavellian player, which Shadow Throne is. And I'll say Shadow Throne is my favorite of the two, just because he's insane.
They
And the question with him,
definitely influenced each other, right? Like, so maybe Cotillion makes Shadow. And I guess that's what uh, we see in the Path to Ascendancy books as well. Like, um, they kind of take character traits from one another and use them to change their own personality a little bit. So I think maybe I'm almost I'm almost thinking that, Cotillion started as a nice guy and then through Shadow Throne became a little bit, more cunning, more kind of power oriented, willing to do things like possessing Absalar. I just
okay, okay, I think I largely agree with what you're saying. The one thing I would push back against is that I think he always had that callousness inside him. You don't
mm,
become an assassin without having that inside of you. And I think you could go back to his early childhood, which we don't really know a lot about. Uh, but I suspect something in him very early on was broken, where he cannot. He can kind of turn it all off, as you have to be able to do if you're an
mhm.
assassin. And so I think that's part of why he and Shadow Throne get along so well, is because I think they're both very pragmatic deep down, and
Would
that
you say
pragmatism comes with a cult streak.
would you say Kalam has that too? Like, I
Yeah,
guess there is a
absolutely.
parallel in between them, right? Like both assassins, but both kind of on a soft side when it comes to feelings or, relationships, emotions.
I think Kalam is probably an actually nicer person
Mhm.
than Cotillion is, as evidenced, in my opinion, by the fact that Kalam doesn't seem very ambitious and doesn't try to achieve the
That's
political
true.
ends that Cotillion does. But I think that they both have to have a fundamental coldness of character. I mean, I think you just have to. You have to have an ability. Well, I guess maybe you don't have to, but you would be a very, very unhappy assassin if you did not have that ability. Actually reminds me that I have a number of doctors in my family, and I was just talking actually to my mom recently about, like, she has a very sick patient, and about like her experience, like, is it always hard? And I was wondering, like, do you eventually get like callous to it? And I mean, she was talking about how yes, it is always hard. And one of the things that does get better is over time you get more confident, so you're not as anxious about the decisions you're making. You trust yourself more. Uh, but that she still is like shaken anytime, especially if a patient dies. That it is very impactful. Um, and so I guess, I mean, I think working in a medical field, I mean, Shannon can speak to this more, I think requires fundamentally maybe more compassion than being an assassin. But, it's a similar sort of like you're confronted with death frequently. Although assassins then they're the ones dealing it. They're not trying to save the lives. I mean, in many ways, it's the opposite.
Yeah, we have that stark contrast in this book as well, where Cotillion has a few scenes where he's like, badass and killing everyone, and then he has those deep um conversations with Absalar about um how she feels about Crocus and what she's afraid of and how she's like, just really vulnerable in a way. And you're like, where is that coming from? Like, how does this guy know
Yeah.
anything about relationships? And yeah, I guess that's what I wondered. But yeah, we should get back to your initial question, Carl, which was, what do they have? What do Cotillion and Shadow Throne plan now after the events of this book regarding the
Yeah.
Crippled God?
That's all the stuff I was trying to track, and I'll confess I'm struggling with, which is part of the reason I wanted to ask it of you two, is like, what's their deal with the Throne of Shadow? Like, it doesn't seem like Shadow Throne is trying to claim it. He's just trying to keep the Tiste Edur from claiming it. Why
Mhm.
doesn't he try to claim it? Because he never does, right? Like, he never makes an attempt on it. The Elder Throne of Shadow.
I don't know. I mean, in this book, yeah, he's just focused on keeping the Tiste Edur off. Um,
I feel like that would be a very memorable thing, right? If he did, if he suddenly made a play for it. And I don't think he ever does, which, like, why? That doesn't make any sense to me. I can't wrap my head around why he wouldn't, because
So
he
he
does
has
seem.
his own Throne of Shadow right now, but it's not
Yeah,
the OG one.
yeah,
It's like his little version that made him
exactly.
Shadow Throne, and
Right.
like, but he's not going any further than that.
yeah,
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 and that's
he's
what it
got his
seems
own
like.
little he. So he has his own little fragment of shadow. Um,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and it's separate from
He
the
rules
throne.
Mianis, I believe. Yeah.
He does actually rule Mianus. Okay. Uh, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the other thing that I question and that I'm curious about, that I was hoping I would have like a better handle on, but I'm not sure I have a much better sense of what he and Cotillion are going for, is the handling the rebellion, because it suddenly seems like they are not as interested in seeking vengeance, or not anymore, against the Malazans, and that they actually are now actively engaged in a chess game with the Crippled God, is kind of my reading of it, I guess. And so the Malazans are naturally then on their side as kind of a force of order, even though, they hate Lysine. What's your read on
Well,
how, like, their impact on, because they send Kalam in there, right? Like, Kalam is Cotillion's agent in this book.
hmm well, did they ever have a problem with the Malazans or just the scene?
I mean, it's overlap, I think.
It's
Again, you think
a
of the
good question
massacre.
though, like, because Lassine is the one who betrayed them and
Yeah,
usurped their empire, but I guess they don't need the empire anymore if they are gods. Like, yeah, I
yeah,
think they really plotted their revenge at the beginning, um, against Lassine specifically. But then, yeah, I think maybe just the focus has shifted because of the crippled god and everything that was happening. I think it's a very simple explanation, but I I think that might be it.
Have They're not behind Lysine's death, are they? I remember she dies at the end of Return of the Crimson Guard, but I don't remember
well,
how.
and that's it. Yeah, she's killed by the Crimson Guard, right?
Okay. I don't remember. uh, which is interesting that I guess they kind of just like let her go and they focus on the bigger picture. Um, it does make you wonder why, why they shift like that. They're like, what is the turning point for them? Is it the Panion Doman that suddenly they realize, oh, the crippled god is actually a huge problem? Or I guess it probably goes beyond that to the Warrens being poisoned. That maybe that's the turning point for them. That they're like, okay, we have to do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a pretty big deal for everyone, like including all the major players. So yeah, that was not a good move again from Crippled God, was it? Just drawing attention of every powerful entity to himself.
I think he was actively trying to. Oh God, now I said this with Felisin. Now I'm saying it with him. But I think I mean he's like a force of entropy in the series, and so I think in that way he was like trying to self destruct. I think he
Mm.
wanted to be killed. Um, like he was like either destroy everything or just be killed. And that only sort of changed when he realized he actually could be freed and liberated in the Crippled God, the book. Um, someone actually showed him compassion for once. I don't know what are y'all's thoughts about the Crippled God at this point. I mean, that's another character that's hugely different to experience on a reread.
Mhm. Well, I feel like, I mean, this book particularly, we haven't seen him a whole lot yet. Um, so yeah, so at this point, when you're first reading it, he's just kind of like a threat that's out there, and you're really, I guess, looking at his agents, uh, like the Unbound. Is the Whirlwind Goddess one of his agents? That was something I
No,
kind of wanted. I mean,
she was a
no,
tool. She was not
yeah,
aligned with him. Explicitly at the end of the book, she's like they're trying to use her, but she's not on their side. Like it's not like he's met with her and is like, or maybe he has, but she's not like team Chains.
yeah. So, um, yes, I felt like he's kind of like a nebulous threat at this point. We haven't really not until we start seeing him on his island, talking to people in the next
Yeah,
book. I think it's the next book. Um,
it's the next book. Yeah,
is when we really start actually really seeing a lot more.
We already
Uh,
saw him talking to Quick Ben, right? Maybe in the
yeah.
previous
In
mhm.
book
Memories of
or
Ice,
Yeah, we have
briefly.
seen
Yeah,
him like yeah, like maybe 2 times. But
yeah,
yeah,
I think like at this point you're just I don't know, the reader maybe is supposed to be confused because it's this obviously bad guy, but
yeah,
then it's also just an old man in a tent somewhere, and then like Quick Ben can come in and kick his ass, and that
yeah,
those are his own words, which doesn't seem compatible with that picture that is being drawn later on, where he's like super powerful, creating his own house, you know, recruiting all
yeah,
these players. I don't know. Yeah, it's
yeah.
very
I think
confusing, I think, initially.
the first time I read it, I think at this point I'm thinking of the Crippled God as this like omnipotent enemy out there that we haven't really seen yet, and we're seeing all of his people so far. Uh, like the Unbound in this, and he's trying to get Karsa on his side, and he's creating his own house and stuff. He's becoming a god. Um,
it's
but yeah,
interesting how Erikson. I mean, this is just occurring to me now, and I don't know if this is conscious on Erikson's part, but the way he tries to humanize the crippled god ahead of his redemption at the end of the series is very similar to how Tolkien humanizes Gollum, in that it's not really about making them like kind or decent or showing like the goodness. It's by making you pity them,
Mhm.
seeing them as kind of wretched and deserving of pity. And in a weird way that, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, enfeeble is kind of getting there. It makes him seem weaker, right? Like, to me, by like book 7, like the crippled god is really not that scary anymore. He's like pretty like looks really pathetic, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, and
Well, once we start seeing him in that tent, I think that really
exactly
takes away
what
from the
his power,
mystique.
his mystique. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's really. I mean, that's maybe something. Maybe I'll write that down. I'm curious if Gollum was an intentional influence, but that yeah, that he is not interested in making him seem like the scariest bad guy ever, and he's not interested in overly fleshing out the goodness in him or you know the hope. Like the crippled god, as far as I remember, doesn't actually ever do anything decent until after he is freed. Am I wrong about that?
I think you're right that he like gradually becomes less like seemingly dangerous. I think, by the time you get to the toll the hounds, you forget that,
Yeah.
he poisoned Burn and
Yeah.
almost ended the world
Yeah.
because
Doesn't
of that.
doesn't Bug come and kick the crap out of him at one point?
Yes, Bug does also. I mean, that's the thing is he
Yeah.
just keeps getting his ass whooped by people, starting with
Yeah.
Quickband. Karsa does it. Freaking everyone does it. It's wild.
He's a pretty crappy god, I'll give you that. Yeah.
It is one of those things that like I a part of me desires, I think just kind of instinctively, a more traditional like big bad who feels really scary and intimidating. You know, like the Voldemort, the Thanos, the Sauron, who's like maybe there's depth there, but there is a general sense of like immense power. And I think when you're first introduced to him as this mysterious character, you do feel like he's powerful. But the more you find out about him, the less powerful he seems.
Do you think Erikson specifically didn't want to create another one of these villains
Yeah.
and be like, okay, let's not make another Sauron, another Voldemort. This is going to be a different kind of anti-hero.
I mean, I haven't heard him talk about the Crippled God specifically, but I do know he loves very intentionally subverting kind of old
Yeah.
fashioned fantasy tropes, like the barbarian, like the light is good, dark is evil, any number of things. But what elevates him in my mind is he doesn't just do that as like sort of parody. He actually like is saying something.
Yeah.
Like with Karsa, for example. And so I do wonder. I'll have to think about like what I think is his point of, because it has to be related to the crippled god as like as this symbol of. Um, I mean, that's what he's god of, is like god of weakness, the wretches, the lowliest people, the ones who are forgotten or outright looked down upon in society. Um, Maybe the whole point is that he's kind of saying, they're not scary. It's easy to other them, but really they're just pitiful and just need to be
Yeah.
released from their cosmic chains to go back to Earth. You guys know
I
that?
was
You
good.
guys know the crippled god is a god from Earth, like our Earth, like our planet.
Oh,
Mhm.
oh,
This is
Yeah.
this is proven. Erikson said this, that he confirmed. We don't know. There's still speculation. We don't know which divinity he's supposed to be. The most interesting theory I read was that he's the Buddha.
uh-huh.
Some people speculate he's Jesus. There's all sorts of theories. One person speculates
I heard the
he's
Jesus thing.
uh, was it Gilgamesh? It's one of like the Babylonian gods. Was another one of the
Okay.
big ones. But the Buddha
Okay.
theory is, I think, the most interesting. A
That
lot of the
isn't I've
associations
never
with
heard that. That's
jade
interesting.
and cycles of violence and rebirth, and a lot of the comments he makes, like if you read it from that lens, it's like, oh yeah, like he's like this twisted version of like the Buddha. But there
Okay.
definitely is Christian imagery as well, so I don't know. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
this is
sure it's
uh,
kinda mind-blowing when you hear that, when
yeah.
you learn that. I just stumbled across that on the internet one day, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Uh, it adds a lot of context. I don't know what the Jade Giants are supposed to be. Worshippers coming from Earth somehow,
I think,
using
yeah,
magic?
I think they are worshipers. They're so numerous when in that scene where they showed up.
I do think if you think of the Jade statues, the Jade Giants, as, like, giant Buddhist monuments, a lot of the pictures become clearer too of them visually. Like, I just think there's a lot of imagery there that makes sense. I don't have a fully formed thought. People online have written up a lot of the details, but, interesting stuff.
Well, I was saying while you were talking, Carl, I did think that was kind of interesting that, the crippled god is presented so kind of pathetically. Maybe that was our tip off early on that this wasn't about him being the main villain of the whole thing and it was going to be about, saving him at the end.
Right. That I mean, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. I do a lot of people, do say that, like, he's not the main antagonist, but I do feel like he is. It's just that he's redeemed and freed at the end, and that you're, like, supposed to have compassion for him because, like, he is the villainous through line through the whole series.
Yep.
If there is one, like, it's him. And I think that becomes most clear in this book, that it's like, "Oh, yeah, like, we're playing chess with the crippled god." Um, I don't know, Mirka, any other thoughts on the crippled god?
Not really. I'm just trying to process what she said because I haven't heard this theory before, so I'm trying
It's
to find
crazy.
evidence in my head right now. Um, yeah, yeah, no, I'll need to check it out.
So we're approaching the end of our discussion here, and I am currently running out of questions to ask. So uh, do you all have any other thoughts or anything you wanted to ask or comment about with this book?
I wanted to go back to Tiste Edur a little bit because we touched on them, I
Excellent.
think, and I think we changed the topic pretty quickly there. But um, so the Silanda story that span maybe 3 books now,
Hmm.
and we're getting the little pieces of it in each book, and the biggest piece, I mean, the final maybe piece is going to be um once we actually get to know Tiste Edur in Midnight Tides and realize that, Benidas Sengar is the one who who gets killed by Karsa and his spear. And um so I guess
Is that one of the brothers or is that the dad? I can't remember.
Benidas is the brother, I
Brother.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm hazy on some of those details. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess where the question, okay, the Tiste Edur are doing all this to get to that throne that they have been looking for, trying to reach it for Rulat Sengar. But do you think that the Edur actually deserve that throne since it is their ancestral kind of property? Is that how you understand that, or
That's interesting.
Well, I
um?
mean, knowing that Rulad is directing them and he's kind of a big asshole, uh, and a pawn of the crippled god. I mean, really, uh, I gotta go no.
Mhm. Well, yeah, he's not doing it for the Edur. He's doing that being manipulated by Crippled
Uh,
God.
I mean,
But
yeah,
but still, would it
my
be such a bad thing if this Edur owned that throne?
my knee jerk reaction is I don't want them to have it, but, I mean, you raise an interesting point. I mean, when you talk about sort of, like, the idea of, like, real world, trying to make any sort of analogy that way to, like, people reclaiming their property, their power,
Uh-huh.
their land even, like, certainly I feel some conflict about it, but I also think that there is, um Carcanis is still coming out, and so I wonder if that there is also more to that story. And, I feel like anytime we find out the origin story of things, it turns out actually that's not the origin story, and there was even more that happened before then, you know? And how much of it is just like elemental shadow, and nobody can know elemental shadow. And so I don't know. I mean, certainly just in terms of like the eater as they exist. No, I don't think they, not under Rulad Sengar,
Mm.
because as Shannon so eloquently put, he is an asshole.
Yeah, he's the worst. We have something. Well, we're going to have plenty of discussion topics, I think, in this coming book about how he's the worst.
I love him. He's one of my favorite villains in this series. I just think he's so fun. He's pathetic, but in a way that's actually kind of scary. And
Yeah,
the visuals, like the aesthetics, crazy, very original. The coins like burned into his skin, awesome.
yeah, yeah. Absolute psycho, not so smart, but kind of going after it. Yeah.
What about you, Mirka? I mean, you asked the question. What are your thoughts on the Eater and
Yeah,
their
I don't know. I kind of
right to the
like when
throne?
you brought up the question about like why Shadow Throne is not going after the real Throne of Shadow. This thing popped into my mind about like, okay, maybe somehow he doesn't care because he doesn't feel like he deserves it or it doesn't belong to him, you know. But then, yeah, I think you're right that um that the Carcanos trilogy might be the answer to all this, and we just have no idea
Yeah.
what will happen there.
The only thing I have to say to all of that is I cannot in any way imagine that Shadow Throne would not just take whatever he wants.
Right?
I mean, he's the
Yeah.
emperor, right? Like his personality is like, if I want it, I take it. It's mine now. Um, and
Yeah,
that's, I mean, that's why
there must be something preventing him from, doing that. And
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a convergence thing where he's worried all the other gods are going to try to kill him if he sits on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems kind of cowardly though, considering how he's like always very eager to, you know, stick a middle finger to anyone else who's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like a chaos being, he loves just causing trouble. All right. Any other final thoughts, final discussions before we close out?
Think so.
No, no. Okay. Um, well, this has been fun. I'm excited to get started. Are we starting Midnight Tides next week? Shannon,
Yes,
do we have a
Varsha
okay.
sent out that we will read prologue in chapters 1 and 2. Discussion next
Excellent.
Tuesday.
So first 3 chapters in Midnight Tides, and we will be back next week to get started. This the midpoint of the Book of the Fallen. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you then.